Hello everyone. I am Mike from Comic Book Fans, and today we're going to be breaking down the newest episode of The Mandalorian that just released this past Friday. Oh boy, it was a good one. Before we start, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. Please like this video. I know it's the stupid spiel every person on YouTube says, but please do it anyway. And be sure to check out our Instagram, which is, I got a lot of more content on that. And be sure to check out my podcast, Stop It, my podcast, and Luke's podcast. All those in the description if you feel like checking those out, which I would suggest you do. But anyway, Mandalorian. So, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the first couple episodes of this season. So, well, first episode was very cool. It was probably one of my favorite episodes, not only because there was so much, like, action and special effects that were just really cool, but all the little Easter eggs and nods were very cool too, because obviously spoilers here, spoilers for like all 3 episodes, so if you haven't watched them, don't watch this video, or do, I don't care, it's up to you. But yeah, so we saw a little bit of Boba Fett really quick, Tamara Morrison playing Boba Fett. I really hope he shows up in future episodes of this season, but if not, I hear they're planning on making Boba Fett miniseries similar to what they're doing with Obi-Wan on Disney+. So if we don't see him in The Mandalorian, hopefully we'll see him again soon in his own series. But I thought it was very cool seeing him, even for an instant, but the even cooler, well, equally as cool, I guess, was seeing his armor, which we haven't really seen since the 80s. You know, we've only seen it in like maybe cartoons and, you know, video games. We've never really seen it. We haven't seen it in live action since like 83 when Return of the Jedi came out. So I think it's really cool that we got to see his armor in live action again, and this with the kind of technology we have now to make costumes look cool. It looked very cool. And I really did like Timothy Olyphant's character, even though he wasn't as cool as Boba Fett. He was still very cool, and he, you know, seeing what I like about this season so far, what I like about this season so far is that we've seen a lot of other Mandalorians working with Din Djarin. We've seen a lot of other Mandalorians working with Din Djarin, which is very cool. We didn't see a whole lot of that in season 1. We saw that in like episode 3, which was one of my favorite episodes because of that. But we you know, now we've seen this guy, the Marshal, use Boba Fett's armor to fight alongside Din, and we've also seen more of that in episode 3 of this season, which, so we'll get to that in a moment. One other thing I thought was cool, I'm sure people have beaten this to death with, you know, in other videos, but I thought it was very cool, a little nod. The Marshal's speeder was an engine from Anakin's pod racer from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which I thought was a cool little nod. And yeah, it wasn't a whole lot, but it was still kind of cool. So anyway, that was all episode 1. Y'all saw, I'm sure. It was cool. Episode 2, it was fun, you know, but not a whole lot happened. The coolest part for me was seeing the X-Wings and seeing Dave Filoni play a character, which he already played that character in season 1, episode 6. But seeing him play the character again was cool. But not a whole lot happened besides, you know, giant spiders and stuff. So it was nice in episode 3 that we got back on track with the main narrative of this season and this series, honestly, which is getting Baby Yoda back to his kind, the Jedi. And I knew that Bo-Katan was going to be in this because, you know, I hear a lot of news. It was reported a long time ago, and I think it's very cool that they got Katie Sackhoff to come and play the character, because she voiced the character in the Clone Wars and then Star Wars Rebels, which is, I think is very cool about this whole Star Wars universe, is that they will introduce characters in the comics or in the books, the novels, and then they'll adapt them onto screen. Like the Marshal, Timothy Olyphant's character, was actually introduced in one of the novels released before The Force Awakens came out as like a companion novel. So they introduced him and even talked about how he got his armor, and then they basically brought that to live action, or got Boba Fett's armor, and they basically brought that to live action. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of this. The whole thing about Star Wars that's very cool is the animated series and well, the comics used to, and the novels all basically add to the universe almost equally, to the point where it's all this one big unit. You really don't see that in any other franchise, really, as far as I know. So that's very cool. So seeing Bo-Katan, an exclusively animated character, come to live action was very cool. It was especially cool because it was Katie Sackhoff, because she's just kind of badass, and then it was also cool because she voiced the character in the Clone Wars. So yeah, all that was very cool. I was a big fan of that, and they revealed quite a few cool things that we didn't know yet about and about Din Djarin himself. So a big question in people's minds has been, how come this sect of the Mandalorians that Din Djarin is a part of, how come they don't remove their helmets? Because as far as we have known, in every other version of the Mandalorians that we've seen in the Clone Wars and everything, Mandalorians remove their helmets, no problem, nobody cares. It's not a big thing. And they did that in episodes, and so basically when Bo-Katan and her companions show up, which was very cool, by the way, they show up, they save Din Djarin and the child from those butthead fishermen, and which I gotta say, they did a really good job adapting Bo-Katan's armor and her helmet, especially, because I know it's what they're supposed to do, but it's just very cool seeing how it translates from animation to live action. They did a very good job adapting her helmet with the special white paint going on, white design. They did a very good job with that. I dig it. And they did a good job with her hair too. How she has that weird little headband thing, and the short red hair. They did a very good job with that. They just did a good job overall adapting Bo-Katan, I guess, to the live action universe, which hopefully they do just as good a job with Ahsoka, but we'll talk about that in a second. So basically when Bo and her companion show up and save Din, a few seconds later they all take off their helmets, and Din's like, wait, where'd you get that armor? Kind of thinking that it's the same thing with Timothy Olyphant's character, the Marshal, getting his armor from an actual Mandalorian, which is even in debate whether Boba Fett's an actual Mandalorian, but that's neither here nor there. And she basically says, like, wait a second, so you're one of those Mandalorians, and he's like, what are you talking about? And she said, you're one of the, something like, you're a remnant from the Watch, or something like that. And she basically revealed that the whole sect, the whole branch, or whatever you want to call it, of Mandalorians that Din Djarin is a part of, they're a remnant of the Night Watch, which, for any of you that have watched the Clone Wars, the Night, and they even revealed a little bit in this episode, Bo-Katan talked about it, but the Night Watch were a bunch of they were a bunch of zealots from Mandalore that basically wanted to go back to the roots of Mandalore, of Mandalorian culture that was very warrior-like, and to the point where Death Watch was a villainous organization for most of the Clone Wars. They were led by Pre Vizsla for a while, then Darth Maul killed him and took over, but it seems like they're a remnant of the Night Watch, which obviously they aren't as evil or overtly malicious as the Night Watch in the Clone Wars, and they obviously seem a lot more religiously devout than the Night Watch did, because Night Watch did want to go back to their roots, but they seemed very much concerned for themselves more than anything, and also they had no problem removing their helmets. So, but that was interesting to find out that Din Djarin is basically an ancestor, or a remnant from the Night Watch, the original Night Watch. That was very interesting to know, and it also kind of explained how the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars can just take their helmets off no problem. I noticed some people were talking about how come the Mandalorians and the Mandalorian can't take their helmets off, but the Mandalorians and like everything else can. So that explains that. There are different sects and tribes to the Mandalorians, which is good to know. It's cool. So I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they explained that, and it's also interesting. Like, I don't think Din Djarin's going to take his helmet off anytime soon, but I feel like at some point that it kind of opens the door a little bit for Pedro Pascal to maybe get a little more face time, because maybe eventually Din Djarin will realize he can be a Mandalorian without following all of the crazy rules that his sect obviously is a fan of. So, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thought it was a super good episode. I thought maybe the cameo with Bo-Katan was just going to be like just that little cameo, but then she and her team ended up being a major part of the episode, which is very cool. And we do realize, I thought this was going to happen. I kind of mildly predicted this in a You know, I talked about this in a podcast months ago, but basically, yeah, they basically have Bo-Katan in it to show how Moff Gideon has the Darksaber, but they did it in a way cooler way than I expected. So, I mean, fair enough. You know, I'm sure they're going to talk about it later, but basically in this episode, Bo-Katan, she wants to retake a bunch of Imperial supplies because she wants to go back and retake Mandalore and repopulate it and, you know, basically rule Mandalore and revitalize it. But the Darksaber, which is like the, you know, Mandalorian weapon that's been passed down for generations and kind of shows you're in charge. So she really wants that, which she did have in Rebels. I think they were revealed in Rebels. I think that was the first time I could be wrong. And if you Star Wars fans or Rebels and Clone Wars fans out there, if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But I believe in Rebels was the first time that we knew that Bo-Katan had the Darksaber, because I believe before that the last person we saw to have it was Darth Maul. But so the last person, as far as we knew before Mandalorian, was Bo-Katan was the last one to have the Darksaber. But then obviously Moff Gideon has it in the season finale, actually the last scene of the season finale of Mandalorian season 1. So they were revealing this episode basically that Moff Gideon somehow stole, or at least the Imperials somehow stole the Darksaber from Bo, and she's trying to get it back, so she, you know, kind of have a claim to the rulership of Mandalore or whatever. Plus, it's also just a ancient Mandalorian artifact, even though previous list said it was stolen from the Jedi. But anyway, so she basically wants to get this Darksaber back Gideon, and it turned, you know, we obviously know Moff Gideon has it. So I feel like that's going to be a storyline or story thread that they're going to explore later. Maybe by the end of season 2, we'll see that, which would be cool, because I feel like there's, you know, we obviously haven't seen the last of Moff Gideon. And I think there's probably going to be a big showdown between Moff Gideon and the Mandalorian at some point by the end of this season. And it wouldn't surprise me if Bo-Katan came back and they all teamed up and she got her Darksaber back. Which would be cool. But who knows? But yeah, that's basically, I'm trying to think, that's most of what I wanted to talk about. Just the whole episode was very cool. It's probably my favorite of this season. It might be one of my favorites ever, just mainly because there was so much awesome Mandalorian action. It was awesome to see Katie Sackhoff, because she's just cool, and it was awesome to see a character, Bo-Katan from the Clone Wars, come to live action. I was a little bit, I wouldn't say worried, I was very intrigued to see how they would do that, and they did a damn good job, I think. So, very much looking forward to seeing any other characters or things they adapt from animation or the novels into live action. So, very cool. One last thing to talk about. So that they didn't even, you know, they didn't hold back at all. I knew they were already going this route when Bo said that she knew a Jedi that Din could talk to. I knew she was talking about Ahsoka, but they didn't they didn't mince any words. She just said, "Go look for Ahsoka Tano." So I guess we're gonna see Ahsoka next episode, hopefully, unless they decide to have another episode where there's something bad happens. He falls into another cave or more giant spiders show up. I don't know, but I'm guessing next episode we get to see Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka Tano, so hopefully she's adapted from the series as well as Bo-Katan was. But yeah, that is basically my breakdown. Don't want to get too much into too many theories or anything. That's all I wanted to talk about. But yeah, last thing, just want to say thank you for watching, and be sure to keep your eyes open for more content and check out our other videos, and that is about it. See you all later, guys.